WMD, weapons of mass destruction. When I say that word, what comes to your mind? Of course, maybe you're thinking about George W. Bush, and you're thinking about this guy that Robert Mugabe used to call Little Blair. These two men made a decision to go and invade Iraq in some years back, and they brought a whole regime down. They made war that saw the destruction and the killing of very many soldiers, especially on both ends. US soldiers by their thousands were killed in the long-drawn war, looking for weapons of mass destruction that we have never been shown, even up to today. What kind of decision-making was that? So in the podcast, in this series, we are in the process of talking about, actually we're closing today, talking about choices and decision making in life and how critical they are. You want to stay tuned for this one.
Welcome to the Life Signatures podcast with Lawrence Namale. Lawrence is a life coach, author, and keynote speaker who loves to tackle different topics on purpose, productivity, and resilience. His mission in life is to awaken all your boundless possibilities available in you. Life Signatures podcast is dedicated to bring to reality every single person who knows that deep down in their gut, there's got to be more to life than this. And now, here is your host, Lawrence Namale.
Have you ever made a selfish, insincere decision that has come back to haunt you over and over again? I mean, before you could make the decision, you are damn sure that you are not absolutely right about it. But for selfish reasons and for reasons known to yourself, you went ahead and you just made the decision like Tony Blair did and George W. Bush did. They knew they did not have any evidence that there were weapons of mass destructions that Saddam was hiding. But they went ahead and they staged a war. Everyone else, in the previous episode we were talking about counsel, everyone else warned against the war. Kofi Annan said, we cannot do this, there is no evidence. The UN said, we cannot do this, there is no evidence. France, Germany, Russia, all those people were saying, there is no evidence that this man is building weapons of mass destruction. So chill out. I mean, hold back. Don't send this word. This guy called Nelson Mandela, actually, he called George W. Bush a fool. You can actually Google. He said, this is a fool who wants to plunge the whole world into a holocaust. Because this man was making a decision that was not objective. And that's what I want us to talk about today, making objective decisions. He was making a decision that was selfish, self-centered, that didn't have evidence. Every counsel that he was taking was actually against that decision. But he went ahead and made the decision and so on and so forth. And the rest, as they say, is history. Let me tell you something. If you know for sure that the things that you want to do are not right, and you feel in your spirit and in your heart that it is not right to make the decision, don't do it. Don't do it. It's gonna come back and bite you. It's going to haunt you. And by the way, you spend the rest of your life trying to smear the whole thing and color it and make it beautiful. This is what Jesus called the whitewashed tombs. In other words, at the outside they look so nice, but the inside they are rotting bones. The rotten bones of your decision are inside. You're spending a lot of emotion, a lot of time trying to cover up for a decision that you knew was wrong, but you went ahead and you made it. See, we are talking about the importance of decision making. How many thousands of soldiers have been killed or were killed? Others were maimed. How many families in America were affected? And we're not even talking about Iraq itself, the regime itself. They hanged the man. Saddam Hussein is dead. They hanged him. And of course, we know about the atrocities that, of course, from the thing that they were telling us, the propaganda that they were telling us, that Saddam was doing this, or was doing that, and his people were like this, and his people were like that, and so on and so forth. But you see, they invaded that country on that decision that was not objective, and very many lives have been affected. Even up to today, probably there are very many lives that are still being affected by that decision. There is a husband whose life was lost. There are kids whose dad they are not going to see. There is a family who is dealing with someone who is maimed because George W. Bush and Tony Blair made a decision that was not objective to go to war. Of course, I'm not talking about George W. Bush, and I'm not talking about Robert Mugabe, and I'm not talking about Tony Blair. I'm talking about you and me when it comes to decision making. We've said, and I'm going to repeat again, that it is in the moment of our decision making that our destinies are shaped. Life is structured in such a way that decisions are what move us to the next level. Decisions are what make us to be in motion. Decisions are what will cause us to be in momentum. Without making decisions, we are not working. We are not progressing. We are not developing. We are not growing. We need to be decision makers to be able to move in life, to be able to develop in life. If you wanted a change in your life, we've been told that the only constant thing in life, it is change itself. And so we've got to be people who are always making decisions, sound decisions. And we've seen the different kinds of things we can be able to do in our decision making process. Of course, we've said that the very first thing that you need to do is to decide big. Make big, huge, audacious, large decisions that make you get scared, and at the same time they make you excited. You see, you are making that decision so that you can move to another level. You make a big decision. When is the last time you did that? If you look at your life and you see maybe 20 years ago, okay, maybe that's too long. 2 years ago, you have not made any big decision in the past 24 months. I'm telling you, something is off about your life. You've not made anything that is scary, or even life itself has not forced on you something that has caused you to make a big decision. Something is off somewhere. So number one, learn to make big decisions. Number two, learn to decide promptly. See, don't vacillate between making decisions. When information is available for you, decide promptly. Don't wait until everything is ripe, the environment is conducive. There's nothing like a perfect moment to make a decision. Just make a decision and start moving, and then course correct as you go. That was number two. And number three, we say that you should decide often. See, look at your life and see how many times are you making good decisions, intentional decisions, well-advised decisions. I think that the interval between the time you're making decisions should be as short as possible. So decide often. Be the person who is always making tough, changing decisions, and you keep moving and moving. The reason as to why, and this is controversial, the reason as to why I think this man called Donald Trump is having very many indicators going on for him, the economy is booming and all those things are happening for him. He is bold enough to often, consistently make decisions. And that's what we need to learn from him, even if we hate him one way or another. And then, of course, we say, don't just decide. If you're making a big decision, take counsel. Listen to others' perspective. Listen to people's input. Listen to people who have experience. Listen to people who have knowledge. Listen to people who are invested in it. Listen to people who are neutral, people who are bystanders, and this make a decision after consulting. Make counsel. That's what Tony Blair and George W. Bush did not do. And the rest, as they say, is history. They made a lousy decision that probably the world over has seen, that is one of the most unfair things to have ever done. Go to war without evidence of weapons of mass destruction. Up to tomorrow, nobody will show you those things. Saddam has biochemical weapons and whatever, all those kinds of things. Man didn't have those things. Now, today, this is a bonus track, okay? If you're going to make decisions, and I know there's so much you can share on these episodes on this subject of decision making. If you're going to make a decision, I would strongly advise that for the most part, you make an objective decision. Feelings are always going to be part and parcel of it. And I know in the podcast yesterday, I talked about you being emotionally invested in things. So today I want us to see, how do you draw a line? How do you balance between being emotionally invested in a decision and at the end of the day, making the right decision, making the objective decision? Okay? Very many things go wrong when we do not decide objectively. And objectivity will mean that you're ridding yourself of your malice, you're ridding yourself of your jealousy, you're ridding yourself of your ego. Someone said ego is basically edging God out. You're ridding yourself of your pride. Basically, you're stripping yourself of yourself and you're looking at the thing in a neutral angle and you're making an objective decision. And I know sometimes there's this series I watched where it's a presidential series, and there is this lady who is the president, and I think her daughter or her son, one of the people in her family, direct family, is involved in something that is controversial in the family and the whole country is in uproar, and the husband is asking her not to make an objective decision. See, the husband is asking her, put your family first instead of putting your country first. And she is so objective, she decides to choose the country over her family. And as they say, the rest is history. Her family was broken, the husband walked away, and so on and so forth. That is the price sometimes we have to pay for our objectivity. And I think one of the people that you can see and you can buy from in his objectivity is God himself. The closer you are to making objective decisions, the closer you are to being godly. I must tell you that. And that's why institutions are being ranked right now. At the moment I am doing this podcast, I have seen a poll in the news where they are ranking the most trusted institutions in America. And the first one is the military. Why is that? It is because of the objectivity in the decision making that those guys are doing. Every time there is no objectivity in decision making, you lose trust. Okay, you lose the passion of the people, you lose the buy-in of the people that you are leading, and so on and so forth. But of course, in Life Signatures podcast, we are not talking about organizations and countries and so on. For the most part, we're talking about you as an individual. Look at your life. Every working day, by the way, every working day you have an opportunity to make an objective decision. You have an opportunity to make an objective decision about your health. Saying no to the third chapati, it is an objective decision. Saying no to one more hour of flipping through the channels, it is an objective decision. Saying no to one more episode of cussing and quarreling and gossiping, it is an objective decision. Objectivity, it is not something that comes on the cheap. It is something that is going against the comfort, against the coziness, against the flesh, as we say in the Christian circles. See, you've got to be as objective and as tough enough for the sake of your life and for the sake of your future and for the sake of your purpose. Because without objective decisions, without being thorough and without being circumspect with making your objective decisions, your life tends to suffer. It is so easy to become a mediocre person because you are not making objective decisions as an individual. Is your ego on the way? Is comfort on the way? Is selfishness on the way? Is pride on the way? Is embarrassment and shame on the way? By the way, sometimes shame and embarrassment can be some things that you can go through while you are making an objective decision. I know of a man who went outside of wedlock and had a baby outside of wedlock, and it broke his heart to pieces. Okay, and he had to face the matter squarely, and that was an objective decision. Do you know what he had to go through? He had to go through facing his wife and telling his wife, listen honey, I sinned. I did that which is wrong. I sinned against you, and I had this relationship, and so on and so forth. He had to face his father and face his mother and face his children. He said he faced his children. He sat his children down and told them his misdemeanors. That was an objective decision. It's not an easy thing to do. I'm telling you, it is not an easy thing to do, to make an objective decision. But this is what he said. He told me that it is the moment of power. He realized how powerful he was, because the moment he didn't make the decision, he was making this sin, this impurity in his life to have a hold on him and to have power over him. But the moment he went out there and made an objective decision to iron it out and to air it out, that is the moment he realized that he has power over it. He had to face shame. He had to face embarrassment. He had to face discomfort. He had to face the prospect of his wife walking away from him because she's been betrayed. He had to face the fact that his wife was going to be thoroughly hurt, and she was. But he made an objective decision to do it anyway. Let me tell you this. Decision making is a powerful thing that we have to do in our lives every now and then. We have to come to that level in our lives that we are going to decide for something or against something. But I'm asking you today to be your own judge, to be someone who sits and you weigh the scales and you make sure that the scales are balancing, that you are objective enough about the decisions that you're going to make. And so you've got to ask yourself, between making an objective decision and between just deciding, where are the scales? Are they going to balance today? Because at the end of the day, it is going to haunt you if you do not make an objective decision. But I'm going to tell you this. You can be objective, yes, and you can have emotionally invested in it, but at the end of the day you can still be objective. In fact, by the way, there's this thing I call instinct, because when I talk about objectivity, people will tell you you've got to rid yourself of the feelings and the emotions and so on. How about instinct? And I'm going to talk about instinct one of these fine days on this podcast in a large dimension. But sometimes this sixth sense, this seventh sense, this something that I cannot put a finger on, but it tells you, Lawrence, this is it. Don't go there. It is asking you not to make that decision. And that can even lead to more objectivity. You don't see the evidence, you don't see the signs, but there's this thing in your spirit, there's this thing in your heart that tells you, don't do it. Or this thing that just tells you, do it. Yes, this is the right move. We have that instinct inside of us. We have that sixth sense inside of us. There's all of us human beings. We have that knowledge, and we need to learn to sharpen that knowledge and decide on instincts. Because instinct it goes past the empirical evidences that we see, and it sees beyond the physical world. It sees in the invisible world. And we can trust the instinct, but we can still make an objective decision. The quality of your life, it is going to be on a daily basis dependent on the objectivity of your decision making daily as a person, as an individual. Every time, every single day, by the way, the use of your time today, like I said in a previous podcast, in a previous episode here, are you listening to me because that's an objective decision you've made? Is this supposed to be the moment for you to listen to me? Or is there something better that you could be doing with your life at this moment in time? How do you use your time objectively? How are you maximizing your relationships objectively at the moment? That is the question that you and I have to answer. So in coming to a close of this mini series on choices and decision making, number one, let us learn to make huge, mighty, audacious decisions. Number two, let us learn to be prompt with decision making, especially when the time is right to make the decision. And I know I say that there is no perfect moment for making the right decision, but at times you have information that is seed enough for you to decide promptly. And then number three, we said you need to decide more often. There should not be a big interval between the time that you're making decisions. Decide more often. And then we said always seek counsel before you make huge life altering decisions. And today we have said this: make sure you are being objective in your decision making. Don't be deciding because you're afraid. Okay, sometimes you can decide because you're afraid, but things like fear, things like jealousy, things like pride, things like selfishness should not be the basis on which you're making a decision. Be as balanced and as objective as possible. But I know this thing is not necessarily foolproof, because when Trump comes up and says make America great, America first, he is being selfish. Someone might ask, is that decision objective? Of course it is objective. Jesus said, love your neighbor as you love yourself. In other words, you are the SI unit of love. I mean, it starts with you. If you don't love yourself, you cannot love someone else. So sometimes that aspect of focusing on yourself can be an objective decision. But at the end of the day, today, on a daily basis, the use of your time, be using it objectively as you move on. So ladies and gentlemen, we come to a close of this mini series on decision making, and let me summarize it for you and tell you this: the quality of your life is dependent on the quality of the decisions that you're making on a daily basis. So make sure you decide. Number two, make sure you're the one who is doing mostly the decision making. You cannot blame someone else for the decisions in your life. In other words, be in charge of your life. Be someone who is invested in making decisions personally, of course with the input of other people. If you're going to be a man of purpose, if you're going to be a man of productivity, if you're going to be a man of resilience, you must be a man of decision making, a man who always makes choices. So I'm sending this over to you, hoping that you've been powerfully empowered enough to make often decisions, to make big decisions, to make consistent decisions, and to be a person who is growing through your decision making. Thank you so much for listening. Until tomorrow, bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Life Signatures Radio. If you enjoyed today's show, subscribe to Life Signatures Radio on iTunes, Stitcher, or visit our website at lifesignatures.libsyn.com. Life Signatures Radio, fresh, clean, and inspiring.